So as I begin my endeavors to review the new generation of GPUs for both Pascale and Polaris, ASUS South Africa was quickest to the punch and sent over their GTX 1080 Strix. Not only has the chip been upgraded, but there's been a few design changes as well from the previous Strix generation cards. So let's dive right into my first GTX 1080 review. Gone are the days of having a poorly lit case interior thanks to ASUS Aura lighting setup. There's plenty of the 16.7 million color RGB LEDs to go around with the lighting on the front, side, and backplate of the card. The lighting is configurable via the Aura software, which can be combined with other ASUS components to create a unified system lighting experience, which they had on showcase at Computex a few weeks ago. I have to hand it to ASUS here. The lighting on this card is well lit, decently placed, and personally, I think that the design of the card is worlds better than the previous 980 Ti Strix GPUs. On the front of the card, in addition to the lighting, there's the triple wing blade fan solution to help cool the DirectCU 3 heat pipes. Functionally, this solution did pretty well with my card hitting a peak 69 degrees Celsius on the stock fan profile, which only sped the fans up to 53%. On average, the card was getting to between 65 and 66 degrees Celsius during a normal gaming session. And even at 53% fan speed, the card is barely audible, with it only hitting 52 to 53 decibels, with my sound meter directly next to the card. With my case on the other side of my desk, the fans aren't audible above the rest of my system. Continuing on with the fans notion, ASUS has implemented a dual 4-pin fan header solution on the inside of the card to help provide more efficient cooling for your chassis. Any fan that is attached to the fan headers on the GPU won't spin up until the GPU is under load itself, thereby eliminating wasted fan power on less stressful tasks. Now moving on to another non-standard configuration implemented by ASUS, the outputs of the card. The standard layout these days is 3 DisplayPort, 1 HDMI, and 1 DVI. ASUS has decided to forego one of their DisplayPort outputs and opted for a second HDMI output to allow for the user to have both an HDMI monitor and a VR system hooked up without having to mess with any adapters. It's actually a pretty helpful solution, but also not the same as some other manufacturers who have decided to include internal HDMI ports to allow for HDMI out on the front of your chassis. But regardless, it is helpful. For power requirements, there's an 8-pin as well as a 6-pin PCIe power input, which ASUS helps out with by including a dual 6-pin to 8-pin adapter in the box, as well as a couple of helpful Velcro straps to manage all of the cables. ASUS has also implemented an 8+2 power phase solution for the card, also known as Super Alloy Power 2. And with regards to power draw, my entire system with the 6700K and the 1080 drew no more than 308 watts under 100% load on the CPU and GPU, and a 220 watt average with a 250 watt peak during normal gaming sessions. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of what this card is, the new Pascale Architecture. The card comes with the standard 2560 CUDA cores, which is less than what was on the 980 Ti. However, there's been improvements in the memory design as well as the GPU itself with NVIDIA's 16nm FinFET architecture. The new architecture has allowed NVIDIA to get much higher clock speeds with dramatically improved efficiency, as evidenced by the aforementioned wattage numbers, and produces some great benchmark results as well. Pascale also brings with it a whole host of other new features such as Ansel, which allows you to take super high resolution in-game screenshots using the GPU, as well as utilizing a high-speed SLI bridge, which uses both of the SLI fingers on the card, and some VR enhancements such as simultaneous multi-projection, which allows for different viewing angles to have actually different in-game angles, as well as asynchronous compute performance, which allows for better VR experiences as well. ASUS has built on this by shipping one of the highest clocked cards out of the box. The OC mode on the 1080 Strix comes with a base clock of 1784 MHz with a boost clock of 1936 MHz. However, in my testing, the actual boost speeds ranged between 1949 and 2063, with the card never dipping below the 1949 during active gaming sessions, so even above what ASUS says it's going to ship with. All of this is combined with the 8GB of GDDR5X memory that comes clocked in at the standard 10,000 or so megahertz. Diving into performance metrics to figure out what all of those specs means, the basic summation is that the GTX 1080 has finally brought 4K 60 FPS gaming to reality. And while I've included new games into my testing suite that didn't exist at the time of my 980 Ti reviews, on the games that I can compare, the Strix 1080 outperforms its predecessor by roughly 20% or so. Cost per frame rate at 4K is also incredibly good, with it ranging between 200 to 300 Rand per frame here in South Africa and between $5 and $15 per frame in the States, based on prices of 13,750 Rand and $679 respectively. Now here at the end of my ASUS graphics card reviews, I usually say something like, it's a great card and I can absolutely recommend it if you live anywhere besides South Africa, because the ASUS 980 Ti's were always priced much higher than the competition for no apparent reason in this country. However, it appears that ASUS South Africa has decided to work on their pricing structure, and the ASUS GTX 1080 Strix is actually priced pretty competitively with other cards here in SA, so good on you, ASUS. And while I haven't tested any other GTX 1080s at this point, all of my research does seem to indicate that on a good day, you'll be able to get a 1080 that can hit just above 2100 megahertz or so while overclocking. And the ASUS Strix 1080 does its best to bring you to that point without you having to adjust anything out of the box. I mean, 2063 megahertz without any overclocking is nothing to sneeze at and provides really good performance. And I can confidently say that if you're looking at getting one of these cards, I can't find a single reason to tell you why you shouldn't, as long as they continue to be priced competitively. So that wraps it up for this video. Like this video down below if you found it helpful at all and you want to see more reviews on the new line of graphics cards. Dislike it if you disagree with my conclusions. You can subscribe to stay up to date on all of my tech related content, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers. Cheers. One more time. One more time. Now here at the